Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. Today I'm joined by Secretary Saunders, who will provide an update on what the Agency of Education has been working on since the passage of the Education Bill last session, which addresses step one of our education transformation. As kids and teachers head back to school, it's an exciting time, the start of a new school year for all of them. And while the experience is similar for most, the opportunities they have are vastly different from school to school, district to district, and region to region. And this very real opportunity gap is holding back too many students across the state. The gap isn't anything new. It's something we've seen growing for years, resulting in communities who can afford to pay more offer more, while communities who can't go without, resulting in vastly different education experiences. And it's showing up in our reading and math test scores. This gap has accelerated, in part due to our school funding system, with too much money going to underutilized space, an inefficient system, and increased administrative costs. But the good news is we have an opportunity to fix this. Last session, we worked with the legislature to lay out the framework to transform our system so it works better for all of us. And while it's not going to be easy, we have to follow through, because making sure Vermont offers the very best education for every student should be one of our highest priorities. And a better education system also helps us recruit the working families and jobs we need in parts of Vermont that have been left behind economically. This includes things like academic excellence, transitioning to a funding formula, and consolidating into fewer districts to help equalize the tax base, which will increase educational opportunity and flexibility for all students. Act 73 laid the foundation for us to make real progress, but it's just the start of what will be a 3-year process. And if we stay focused, we'll make positive change for our state and guarantee every student has access to the best education in the nation, where our educators are better supported, and do it all at a cost Vermonters can afford. With that, I'll turn it over to Secretary Saunders.
Thank you, Governor. I want to start today by congratulating students and teachers across the state for an excellent start of the new school year. As a mom, I always enjoy the first day of school pictures and that mix of excitement and nervous energy that comes with a fresh start. And for kids, this time of year is always an opportunity for new beginnings and endless possibilities. And as students bravely take on the challenge of a new grade or even a new school, I think we as adults could learn a thing or two for their openness for change. In the spirit of embracing new possibilities, I am pleased to provide an update on the implementation of Act 73 and thank the Governor for this opportunity. Our role at the Agency of Education is to lead the way on big changes that will make our Vermont public education system the best in the country. Leadership carries big responsibilities. And for me, that is why it is important to start by describing our values and how we are approaching this work together. We believe in personalized learning, so every student is prepared not just for graduation, but for life. We believe in equal opportunity and a whole child approach, so that every child has access to a great education, no matter where they live or the wealth of their community. And above all else, we believe in doing everything in service to students and know that each student can learn and achieve at high levels. We believe that students should be deeply connected to their local communities while simultaneously prepared for the jobs and opportunities of the future. Lastly, we know that strong schools are essential to Vermont's economy and future. When students succeed, communities thrive, and our state prospers. These are the values that continue to guide our work around Act 73. There's no shortage of great ideas or good intentions when it comes to education transformation. The real challenge lies in implementation. That's why we are committed to carrying out a plan that makes our education system the very best for every community, for every school, for every classroom, and for every student. I want to share a few highlights of the meaningful progress underway around special education, statewide graduation requirements, data reporting, and supporting other elements of Act 73. First, we are focused on strengthening special education services and are working closely with educators across the state and the Special Education Advisory Panel to identify unmet needs, analyze trends, and build consensus on a path forward. This work isn't just about compliance. It's about improving instruction for all students. At the end of the month, we will release a report that will shape our strategic plan and serve as a blueprint for implementing the best practices with fidelity across Vermont. Next, we are charged with recommending statewide graduation requirements. This is our chance to set a true standard of excellence for Vermont and to ensure that a diploma signals a real accomplishment. It should stand as a clear standard for students, a trusted measure for employers, and a meaningful credential for colleges. We've begun phase 1 of this work and are reviewing the work done already to date in looking at our graduation requirements across the state. We're developing content strategies and working with leaders to shape the rubric we'll use to evaluate those graduation requirements. At the end of the day, this work is about preparing every student for success in college, careers, and life. Agency staff have also been working diligently to support the State Board of Education, which has formed 2 committees per Act 73, the Small School and Sparse Schools Standards Committee and the State Aid for School Construction Advisory Board. Lastly, the agency continues to provide data to the Redistricting Task Force. We have provided a significant amount of data to support the critical work of contemplating new school district boundaries. In fact, our latest submission responded to over 160 discrete data requests. As we speak, the task force is holding their 3rd meeting, where I'm told they're already evaluating a series of proposals for new district configurations. Vermont's transition to a reimagined system of public education is well underway. But as we collectively move towards a more equitable and sustainable future, we should acknowledge that no matter how bright the future, change is always hard. And so it's worth remembering why we're doing this to begin with. It may feel like a long time ago, but just last year, I was traveling to every corner of Vermont, where I listened to students, parents, and educators articulate their vision for change. Students told me they wanted expanded opportunities, from internships and career exposure to advanced courses and enrichment. Teachers emphasized the need for more consistent standards and access to high-quality professional development, both to raise student achievement and to retain great educators. And local communities, while realistic about the obstacles, shared a common desire to build the best public education system in America and to ensure that every student has the chance to succeed. As a member of the Commission on the Future of Public Education, I have heard these same themes for the last 12 months. At the same time, I know we're also hearing real concerns about the pace of change and what it means for individual schools and communities. We need to acknowledge these concerns and do more than just mitigate them. We need to build solutions that deliver on the best opportunities for students. The reality is this: as a state, we've chosen to do the hard work of improving opportunities for kids. We must stay on this path. Stepping back or failing to move forward would not serve our students, and it would not serve our taxpayers. This is the vision behind Act 73, and this is the inspiration for driving the hard but necessary work of education transformation in Vermont. There's still much to do, but I believe that if our students can embrace the change of a new school year with courage and optimism, we as adults can embrace the change of building a stronger public education system for Vermont with the same courage and optimism. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Secretary,
We'll open up to questions, maybe, yeah, probably mostly for Secretary Saunders, but.
yes. Secretary Saunders.
Yes.
I just was told last week by someone at AOE that we don't keep any dropout data. AOE doesn't have any dropout data. Is that something you're aware of? And if so, do you have other data? Is it Mark?
Yeah, so we are doing a lot of work as an agency in supporting the reduction of chronic absenteeism and truancy. It's actually one of our strategic priorities. We're working very closely with our sister agencies that are also involved in this work, and have contracted with an expert who is helping to give us guidance on both how we better track and report data related to truancy, dropout rates, and chronic absenteeism, and also to developing strategies that can be effectively implemented within schools so that we can reverse that trend. So I think what you're noting is that we certainly have seen an increase in chronic absenteeism, which is concerning and is an area that we've placed a lot of focus as an agency.
What's causing that?
I think there's a variety of factors causing chronic absenteeism. We certainly nationwide saw a large increase during the, after we returned from the pandemic. And I think it's pointing to a number of factors that students are facing, and so we really need to be mindful of what is contributing to chronic absenteeism and put strategies in place. We are also partnering with UVM and their pediatrics department that's very focused on being a partner with us and helping to reinforce the importance of going to school. It's really important that our students are showing up in the classroom so that they have the opportunity to learn and grow. And so we are working on some coordinated partnerships with our medical partners and other community partners to reinforce that message and getting kids to
If you
school.
want to take a deeper dive into this, do we contact your office?
Yes, I can put you into working on the team.
You listed the statutory deliverables that your agency is working on. Do all of those eventually need sign off from the legislature in order to go live?
So I think it's a combination. So as we walk through those deliverables, I mentioned the work we're doing around special education. We are charged with developing a report and also implementing a 3-year strategic plan. Within that, I think existing statute will allow us to implement. A lot of what we're talking about is developing a blueprint to implement the best practices that were already outlined in Act 173. So for that particular deliverable, we think there's opportunity to really move forward more expeditiously without legislative action. Related to the statewide graduation requirements, we make the recommendation to the state board, and then the state board will be involved in a longer term process with those being approved in 2027. So as we're making those recommendations to the state board, we're also accompanying that recommendation with a roadmap for how we're going to involve additional stakeholder feedback and input within that time frame. So it really depends on the specific deliverable. Some are within existing statute and are really focused on how the agency can support implementation. Others will require us to work with the state board in a rulemaking capacity. And as we dive deeper into this, we may identify that there are certain statutory changes that may be required in order to allow us to more fully and meaningfully impact these solutions. And at that time, we'll bring those forward.
I know there were lawmakers who had some concerns about whether you would have the human resources that you need to do all this work. Have you made any staffing changes at the agency related to Act 73 at this stage?
Not related to Act 73, but what I was really clear about when we started the Listen and Learn tour was that we would realign our work at the agency to meet the biggest needs of the field. And we have been doing that over the last year, and in the summer we have made really concerted efforts to reorganize our work and our teams to be very responsive to the needs of the field and to strengthen our support in key areas. And so what you'll see in kind of the new agency of education as we're going into the next school year is stronger support as it relates to special education, promoting safe and healthy schools, supporting with evidence-based instructional strategies, a number of other priorities that we identified through our strategic planning process.
What are the key things that need to happen during the next legislative session in order to keep this endeavor on track?
Mhm. So a key deliverable is approving the redistricting boundary maps that the task force is charged to present. So they're charged to present 3 maps to the legislature for approval. That is a really critical input. Additionally, there will be another study related to the foundation formula. That study needs to incorporate the input around how the district will be organized. That's an important input to determine how we will resource our system and structure staffing and so forth at both the central and the district, central and school level. So those are really 2 key inputs that are needed. And then the others, such as graduation requirements and some of the other quality standards that we've already outlined related to class size and so forth, are already embedded within existing education quality standards and under the purview of the agency and the state board.
I think it's December 1st, right, is the deadline for the task force for submitting the 3 recommendations. Do you feel confident at this point that that timeline is still realistic, like to get recommendations that are going to be workable for legislators next year?
So I don't sit on the committee, but I can certainly share that, I think we've provided the amount of data and information that they need to be able to make those recommendations. In their meeting today, I believe they're really getting clear around how they're going to evaluate their proposals. So I think that's a very critical next step for them to put forward maps. But I think we really need to be clear about what districting does and what redistricting doesn't do, right? So redistricting is an important element of ensuring that we are appropriately resourcing our system, but there are a lot of other considerations that need to go with that as we look at funding and quality that are all coordinated. But I do believe that the districting task force has the information and the data and expertise they need to be able to make those recommendations. Additionally, beyond the Agency of Education support, the Agency of Digital Services has provided a mapping tool that I think is a really incredible resource, and it includes a number of layers, including some demographic factors, and school location, some identifiers that are helpful, I think, in informing the redistricting task force work. Sarah, did you have anything?
I'll just add, if you're interested in more information, the Agency of Administration Secretary's Office hosts a web page for the redistricting task force that includes lots of detailed information, from the mapping tool that Secretary Saunders just referenced, to the list of the members, to links to the meetings themselves. There's a wealth of information there and all of the data that's been provided.
December 1st, also another big day in the education world, because we find out from the tax department projected spending and impact on tax rates. Do you have any indication at this stage of what the increase might look like for next year? And have you begun to develop strategies to minimize the effect on homeowners?
Yeah, obviously, I'm very concerned about what the December 1st letter will reveal. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's of the magnitude that we saw last year. While I'm not ready to commit to what we're going to do, it's an important issue, and we will be developing our own budget. And this year is going to be a little bit more difficult than maybe last year. So we're going to have to make some tough choices. So that will be one of the choices, I'm sure, as we develop our next budget.
I believe the projection is 1.6% increase in general fund revenue for FY for the next fiscal year. Will whatever that consensus forecast is be your ceiling for growth in general government?
Yeah, I mean, we want to limit our growth, obviously. We've asked our agencies and departments to come up with a budget that fits within our constraints. I think we pegged it at 3%.
Yes, up to 3%.
So that's what we've asked, and hopefully under that. But again, we'll see what happens when we start receiving the budgets from the agencies and departments, as well as the December 1st letter and other issues that are coming every day, it seems like, from the federal government, and what they will fund and what they won't, and we'll have to make all those decisions over the next few months.
The Mountain View Supervisory Union, I don't know if you've seen the letter that they put out, but they're calling for an emergency legislative session, and they want construction debt removed from the per pupil spending, and also doing away with double taxation. Is that possible, and sort of what would that look like if it is possible?
I will just address one of those issues. We will not be having a special session. January will be coming soon enough, and we'll address whatever needs to be addressed at that point.
I would just say that the School Construction Aid Advisory Board has been formed and is meeting, and I think that's the type of consideration that they might review and make recommendations accordingly.
And then one other question for you, Zoe, is I know the governor mentioned gaps in test scores, but national data is showing a decline in literacy rates. Is that something we're seeing in Vermont? Are you concerned? Are there plans to address it if there are concerns?
Yeah, we are concerned about the declining performance as it relates to reading scores. So you're referencing the NAEP, which is the national assessment where we can compare Vermont to other states. We started seeing a decline in our literacy outcomes before the pandemic. And while there continues to be a decline nationwide, we are seeing some really considerable drops for Vermont, which is concerning. In fourth grade reading, we used to score at the top in the country, and in the last results, we dipped below the average. So it certainly is an area we are very much focused on. As you know, the state of Vermont and the legislature passed a literacy bill 2 years ago, and it was amended to not only apply last year to apply for K-12. So there's a lot of work underway in ensuring that we are teaching the science of reading, that we're providing the appropriate training and support for our educators. The Agency of Education launched a new statewide literacy initiative called Read Vermont last year, and we're continuing to provide support to the field along with some key partners in providing job-embedded coaching and training and professional learning communities to ensure that our teachers are equipped and supported with the tools and resources that they need in the classroom. And then similarly related to math, this is an area of focus, and we're working in a very concerted way to identify how we can strengthen our math performance with some of our content experts at the agency and across the state of Vermont. So what you'll see in the agency's strategic plan is a very clear focus on increasing academic outcomes, and we're organizing our agency to provide really targeted support in that area to be a partner in the field.
I could just add, one of the issues that came up during the interview process with Zoe was reading and math, and she shared our concerns about both of those issues and then hit the ground running with a reading program. So I think it validated why I feel she's the best person for the job, and again, I think she's hitting on all the right issues when we think about what our kids need and how we've slipped nationally in a couple of different areas.
What do you think of the federal court decision? Can I go off topic? Okay. What do you think of the federal court decision upholding Mid-Vermont Christians being allowed to compete in high school athletics?
I saw that yesterday, and my feeling is that the court ruled correctly, but I also believe the VPA set the standard that needs to be adhered to. If a school decides to forfeit a game because they don't want to play against certain players, I guess that's their prerogative. But we should allow kids to play, and I think that this strikes that balance. It was a very narrow ruling, but I think everyone got something out of it, and we'll continue to do what we think is right.
I also have an off-topic, if that's okay. Just Burlington, how important is Burlington/Chittenden County's financial health to the rest of the state?
Well, obviously, Burlington is our highest population area. It does bring in a lot of revenue to the state, so it's important. I met with some business owners and business leaders yesterday to try and, as I said, I think last week, I was going to meet with a number of different groups over the next couple of 2 to 3 weeks to help learn what they think is the issue and how we can fix it. So I think the good news is, I think there is a path forward. We'll be putting together a plan over the next couple of weeks and present something to the mayor and to the council for their consideration.
Along that line, the Burlington Daily News reported yesterday that City Councilor Mark Barlow worries that the planned safe injection site may attract drug abusers. Quote, "I can't help but wonder if our problems grow because the response and resources don't exist in other cities and towns and people are coming here." Is that, do you think current services, either in Burlington or elsewhere in Vermont, actually attract homeless and substance abusing population? And if so, is there a better way to do this?
I agree wholeheartedly with the councilor. As you remember, I vetoed on a couple of different occasions safe injection site. I don't think it's the right path forward. I think there are other areas where we could invest more money, prevention and so forth, and recovery, that would be much more beneficial. And I do think it's an attraction. It enables, and I'm opposed to it. Now, having said all that, the next question might be, why did you sign off on it? But it was money that we received from the settlement, and it was part of a larger package. And to not move forward with any of the proposals within that package would have been detrimental to our mission to solve and at least mitigate the issue of the epidemic we see across the state. So again, I question whether they'll ever get that off the ground, but and if they don't, that would be good news from my perspective.
What was your takeaway from meeting with the business leaders yesterday?
I think they confirmed a lot of what I'm hearing from Vermonters, as well as those who live in the community. So there wasn't anything new, but it was a very diverse group that I met with. Some might be far left-leaning, some right-leaning, some in the middle, and they were all speaking with pretty much one voice. They want action. They want to see something done. And so, again, we'll be meeting with other groups to see what the art of the possible is and how we can help the city, because the Burlington is important to us and we want to help. I look at this, I said during the meeting yesterday, I look at this as like a crisis that they're facing, much like a flood. And the first thing that we need to do is respond to the flooding and help people, and then the recovery part after. So it'll be a two-step process, but first things first.
What other groups are you meeting with? Like, what do you mean by other groups?
We'll be meeting, I want to meet with some of the citizens from Burlington, because a lot of the business owners aren't from there. I'd like to talk to people who've been around for a while and understand the process, maybe former counselors and maybe present counselors, I don't know. But just to get a flavor and different perspective from different groups, as well as with, the higher education, UVM, Champlain, and so forth.
And you said that the administration will come forward with a proposal? Or
Yeah, maybe like a blueprint, what we think we can do to help, and what's feasible, and maybe some suggestions about what they can do.
What do you mean by that? Would they be like a charter change?
I don't want to get ahead of
Okay.
whatever we're going to put forward.
Yes.
But again, we want to help, and we'll put together something that accomplishes that.
I think it was a few weeks ago, the same issue came up, and you said they haven't asked for anything. So I can't really act in the absence of that. Now it sounds like you're ready to take a more proactive approach.
Proactive in terms of presenting something, what we can work together on. I mean, we have, there's areas that we might be willing to do, other areas that we're not willing to do, and they may feel the same. But we have to get something out of it. I don't want this to be just a gap, to fill the gap, short-term solution. We want this to work over time to get to the second part, the recovery.
Fair to characterize that as a change in posture on your part?
I don't think so, because what I was getting at was, we're not going to force ourselves onto the city, much like we're seeing across the country with the current administration in Washington. That's not our role. If the city would like our help, we would lay out a plan to let them know what we can provide and what we can't. And so we want to work together. So it's not, I wouldn't say the posture has changed, it's just maybe the perception of that posture.
Has the mayor's office asked you for a blueprint, like you said, of?
They have not,
Okay.
but they've asked for a meeting.
All right, we'll switch over to the phones now. Tim, Vermont Biz.
No questions, Governor. Thank you.
Tom Davis, Compass Vermont.
Thank you. Governor, there's been some news that's been coming out about the delays that have taken place in trying to get these speed limitation cameras in work zones, and so that it's more protection for people for highway safety. In the process, one thing that's obvious is that there was a mandate with the legislative vote requiring that any potential violations had to be reviewed by a certified law officer or sworn, I believe they said. And then and also they had to be the ones to issue the citations, which has brought up the issue of a lack of police force both locally and at the state level. Have you considered going back to the legislature this year to ask them to change that mandate so that could be more of an administrative position that could be funded and taken care of with regular employees?
I'll ask Secretary Flynn to weigh in, but I would just answer that. I'm sure we'll have this conversation come January with the legislature because it's proven to be a little bit more difficult than I think anyone imagined. So we'll just go from there, but I'm sure we'll engage with them. Secretary Flynn.
Thank you very much, Governor. Good afternoon, Tom. I testified back in May along with a member of the Department of Public Safety on behalf of Commissioner Morrison, who was unable to attend due to an out-of-state meeting. And my testimony was that we don't disagree with the pilot, and this was prior to adjournment, so it was prior to the legislation being signed, but that we were running into practical problems as the article quite accurately laid out. And the big issue was personnel. And in the meantime, what I said we would do is we would meet with the judiciary to better understand what elements of statute would be required to be addressed if there were to be a request to have the legislature revisit the language of this, allowing a civilian employee, meaning a non-sworn law enforcement officer, process these tickets. And Commissioner Morrison and I and a member of her department met with Judge Zone from the judiciary, and it was Judge Zone who had testified on this topic before the legislature, so we asked to meet with him, and he was very gracious in doing that with us. And he wasn't addressing whether the judiciary agreed with policy or not. He simply was very helpful in walking us through the specifics of legislation, which would need to be slightly altered in order to propose language for a civilian to process the tickets, and also raised a very good point, which we are still discussing prior to anything that may or may not go forward, as the governor said, which is then how is an appeal handled? Because currently a officer writes a ticket and the citizen has the right to go before the traffic court if they disagree with the ticket. I myself have had to do that as an officer in the past. And if a civilian writes the ticket, how then would the civilian be expected to go to court on behalf of the state? There's just a lot of things that, in my opinion, weren't completely understood to the degree of detail that would allow us to have met the timeline put forth by the legislation. Again, I think it's important that no one believe that this is a dismissive of the concern of highway safety or workers in work zones. So we have gathered the information from meeting with the judge, and that is being considered, and what's decided will be decided, and any changes to what we might do will be presented in January.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions?
All right, we'll go back to the room.
On the return to office, I think it's obvious, right, that having state employees in Montpelier is beneficial for the local businesses here. But I'm wondering how much that factored into the decision to have employees come in 3 days a week. Like, how much was the kind of vitality of the business community here part of your decision?
Well, obviously it's important, but I wouldn't say that was instrumental in why we decided to come back to office work. But it was a factor, even just a consideration. They've been asking for quite some time, but I go back to why we think it's time. I think we do lose something when we're not in person, and we glean a lot of information from one another to give us better results for taxpayers. I think you all can understand that as well. I mean, going in person to the legislature to get your story or to come here is sometimes more beneficial than being remote. So I think it's the same thing with employees, state employees. They learn from one another. Secretary Clark is a long-time state employee, and I think there was nobody better to lead this effort than her, because she's lived it for a lot of her life. So again, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Secretary Clark, at this point.
I don't think so, Governor. I mean, I can always add. Like, believe it or not, this is probably, I'd say, 99% of my focus right now, which is not normally the case. I think to the governor's point, not only have I been a state employee for more than 20 years, I worked in the federal government for 7 years prior. I'd say until the pandemic, all of my time has been in person. What I like about what we are proposing for our workforce, that it is a hybrid approach for all those positions that can be both in the office and remote, that it really reflects a thoughtful turn to coming back together more for some of the benefits that the governor has discussed. It's the collaboration, it's the mentoring, it's the culture that you develop when you are together. The relationships, to his example, for you, working at the State House is very different being in the building than trying to report remotely, the relationships that you form. And so we're doing this very intentionally with a focus on those benefits that we've discussed, but also wanting to allow the flexibility for the employees that can work remote to have 2 days a week remote, 3 days in the office or in the field, depending on the nature of the position. But it really is meant at striking a balance. An advisory group has been formed that is coming up with some recommendation to address where we are able, some of the concerns and questions that we've received from our workforce.
One question I had too on this, and it was a little hard for us to find this information, so we thought maybe you would have it, but how does Vermont's plan compare to what other state governments are doing? Like, is 3 days in person, 2 days hybrid, do a lot of states do that? Are we unique in doing that? Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, and I can provide more fleshed out details. Our team has done that research, looking across what other states are doing, and it is a mix, but there is definitely a movement to bring people back more consistently in person. Many states have done it sooner than what we have, but I think in Vermont we're unique in that we came out of the COVID disaster, if you will, and then we're faced with a flood in 2023 and a flood in 2024. So we're have been dealing with those disasters, which is why we are framing this as the next step on our recovery coming out of COVID and 2 floods. So what we're doing is not different than what is happening in other states across the country, and that information and data is informing the work of our advisory group and the recommendations that we'll be bringing forward.
Is it fair to say that 3 days a week hybrid is standard across the country for state government? Is it normal? How do I characterize
Yeah,
that?
I don't want to provide a data answer when I don't have a list of how many states are 2 days versus 3
Yeah.
days versus 5 days. And that's something that we could, as part of our process, we'd be doing that analysis, so I don't want to answer in that way. I think the other, we are public servants, like I've built a career being a public servant. It's a very important value to me to give back to the place that I love, that I live in, that I was born in. I think looking at the private sector, which is not an exact comparison with state service, you are seeing a similar trend with a lot of private companies where they have already and are continuing to bring their employees back for more in-office presence for some of the same reasons that we have articulated, including businesses in Vermont.
I think really quickly, again, apologize for my tardiness, Governor. Some conservative commenters or commentators like Rob Roper have said that there should be a plan B in case these education reforms fizzle out. I want to ask in terms of, have you thought of any sort of plan B based on what you're seeing so far? And do you believe there would be any consequences to a pro-affordability agenda should they not come to fruition?
I think we're fully behind the plan that's been put together. We worked with the legislature. A lot of compromises were made very early in the process, but we're at a critical point at this juncture in getting the lines drawn for the districts. So that's step one, and we'll be watching with interest as they meet. I understand even today they might present some district lines for consideration, so that would be good news, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, way too early to talk about a plan B. I think we're in plan A, and I think it's the right plan.
Thank you.
Anything you want to?
The only thing I want to add there is that it's really important that we move forward and get clarity on the implementation. That helps to give really clear parameters for the districts around next steps and moving forward. So if there should be any delay, it creates a lot of uncertainty that's quite unproductive and not supportive of our goals of improving our system for students. So I think we have laid out a plan and very key deliverables around what's next in order to achieve, and I think it's really important that we stay on that course. I know in my role, I hear pretty consistently from the field asking for more clarity. And so it's important that we continue on this process with the timeline that has been defined so that we can provide those answers to move this work forward, because it's all in an effort to strengthen our public education system. And I think there's really broad consensus of the importance of that. So just encourage us to continue with the path. And in my role at the Agency of Education, we're doing all we can to support the various committees and to provide really meaningful recommendations on the reports that we are required to deliver to move this forward.
I think it's really important for your listeners, your viewers, to understand, because when they heard that we passed an education plan, I think there were some who thought instantaneously that property taxes would decline. Well, that's not the case. I mean, this is a 3-year transformation process. It's going to take time for that to happen, and it won't happen in the first year, the second year, and possibly into the third year. So it's important for all of you to report about what we're doing here, and it's a step process. It's going to take some time. All right, thank you all very much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One more?
Yes.
Easy one?
Governor, you're a bicyclist. On
Easy
Monday,
one.
an e-bike rider died in a collision. Do you think Vermont should be requiring, we don't now, should be requiring helmets for either e-bikes or bicycles?
I wear a helmet in racing. I wear a helmet on my motorcycle, and I have a helmet that I wear when I'm cycling. So I believe in helmets, but at the same time, I think making it mandatory for cyclists to have helmets, I think, is unnecessary, and I believe that we should continue what we've been doing in the past.
Those are
In terms
28-mile-an-hour bikes?
But that's a difference. I want to get to that.
Sorry.
There is a difference now. I mean, we had, I remember back in the 80s when mopeds were very popular, and that became a problem then. So there was a horsepower limit that was placed as to what you'd adhere to wear a helmet and be determined to be a motorcycle. So it's the same thing here. Some of these e-bikes are getting too fast, and they are motorcycles. So at that point, we should determine what the limit is, and I'm sure there's going to be a national trend on this as well. But I look forward to working with the legislature and forwarding any ideas we might have as to what other states are doing, because I do think, again, this can get out of hand, because an electric motor is still a motor, and you can actually pack a lot of punch into an electric motor that even would exceed some of the internal combustion engines that are there today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much.
So I was reading how this Vermont story about what was going on.